Hello and welcome to this short presentation on what I think are effective property management strategies for anyone that is trying to either get into property management or someone that is practicing it. These strategies should help you to actually become more effective at your job or help to guide anyone that is starting out on what the industry standards are, what to expect from the industry, and in general, how you can thrive in the industry. So, what I hope that this presentation will do is shed some light on a few topics that I think are or I have experienced that are very relevant to you when you are operating in this market, and that I think will just be that differentiating point for you and hopefully will make a lot more money for you and your landlords. We are going to start with an overview of property management. So we are going to talk about what property management is, and then we shall go into the different strategies. So among these, I have deep market knowledge for the area in which you are operating in, innovative marketing strategies, or just strategies, because some of them are innovative, but of course, to perform or outperform others, you need to innovate in some areas. So that's why I've sub-labeled this as innovative marketing strategies. And then exceptional communication skills. I believe that this one is undoubtedly one of the top skills, and that's why I wanted to discuss it at the top. Customer service excellence, strong organizational skills, which almost also doubles as crisis management, but I wanted to sort of separate them so that we can get to understand the difference between being organized and then being able to handle a crisis. For which in property management, anyone who has worked long enough will know that you're actually employed to take care of the crises. So yeah, we'll go through that one as well. Utilizing property management software, if that is a route you want to take, or you are looking at optimizing your operations through onboarding software, using software, or you have built your own software. You work for a firm that has its own proprietary software like we do. And then building a reliable vendor network and how it can influence your performance, understanding financial acumen, so all these financial terms that we throw around, or all the reports that we need to do, whatever you need to know financially as a property manager, I'll also hint on that. And then providing detailed financial reports, which is very key for any landlord and property manager relationship. And then we'll conclude and hopefully just go through a summary of what we have discussed. I had already pre-recorded this actually, and I realized the first recording was very long, and I actually had I should say my face hovering above the slides. So this time I've decided to retake this and just focus on the presentation without you guys actually being able to see me, the presenter. But I hope this will not take away from the motive here. Maybe we'll just have to catch me in another video to actually see my interactions with you. So let's start off with an introduction to property management. So for anyone that actually wants me to, because I hadn't planned to give an overview, like I should say, a hardcore definition of what property management is. But for anyone that who has or wants some guidance on that, personally for me, how I think about property management and how I define it for myself is that I look at it as a role that is essential to the performance of a property, not just physically, but financially as well, and then also compliance wise, so that is legally. So I look at it in this sort of three buckets, which is going to be streamlining operations. So that is anything that has to do with coordinating activities on ground, carrying out those property management site walks, doing reports and everything. That is streamlining operations. And then the second piece is ensuring compliance. So whether it is with internal laws, like let me say if you are managing a condominium property or a gated community, you're going to probably have rules, house rules, or community rules that you're going to be enforcing as the property manager. Or in another twist of fate, you are also complying with regulations that have been set by governments and your local area actually. So let's say if it's still a condominium property, you're going to have the Condominium Property Act and so on. And then the third piece I like to look at it is optimizing for profitability. So both for yourself as the property management company. So in that case, you are trying to optimize to get the highest rent, get the highest occupancy, all that. And then also for the landlord, which actually becomes a dual mandate for you in that you are already optimizing to have the building as full as possible and making as much rent as possible and then lowering expenses. So at the end of it all, when you optimize for the landlord's profitability, you end up also optimizing for your own performance, especially if your, I should say, your take home pay or whatever your percentage for the company is going to be tied to the percentage of rent that is collected. So when you optimize for the profitability of the building itself by meeting whatever demands you have or leveraging whatever, I should say, strategies that we are going to discuss here, you're going to find that you're better suited to collect more and then spend less. And in turn, you sort of have more profit for your landlord and in turn yourself as well as the property manager. So that is how I like to think about property management. But then for context in our presentation here, I want us to localize this definition or whatever we are going to be discussing, because understanding property management in Kampala, because I decided to focus on Kampala because yes, this is where I operate in, but understanding the local significance of the market that you're operating in is actually, I should say, one of the very key steps in understanding what kind of services you're going to be offering, and then what the expectations are around the properties that you are managing. So let me give an example here. For example, managing a commercial building, especially in Kampala, is going to require that you work in dollars. Most landlords are going to be charging USD. So moving out of the CBD or even outside of Kampala, you'll find that most people are charging in UGX, and maybe it's flat figures and everything. And there is a whole lot of, I should say, complexity that comes in when you are working in a foreign currency, and you always have to do those conversions and account for them every month. So that's where this whole property management efficiency comes in, that you are able to adopt to the kind of market that you are working in. So it's also going to be different if you're working in Kenya, you're working in Tanzania, maybe the local currency there changes, maybe some rules change, but that is the point on having local market significance. And that is going to help you to actually enhance your effectiveness and maximize your profitability, just because you are able to tailor your services to the kind of area that you are serving. Also, another note here is that this presentation aims to equip property managers and anyone that is in real estate to thrive in their local market. And that's why I have decided to go very hyper local and use Kampala as an example. But you can actually tailor this presentation to whatever market you are in. And then the third thing that I wanted to mention before we go ahead is that I'm going to actually do my best to emphasize and harp on best practices, so that we can be better equipped with what is expected of us, because a lot of us get into property management without actually having studied the course or done anything. So we learn from people, we learn from work, but they are obviously best practices that need to be emphasized. And those are some of the things that I am going to, I should say, harp on while we go through these different slides. So I hope that that is something that you'll pick up, and that you'll be more willing to pick these things up and then apply them within your work. So I hope that gives you an introduction on what we're going to cover today and what property management is. It's going to be different for you based on your local market, but it's also going to be different based on the kind of properties that you are looking after. So let's say you are looking after an industrial complex, it's also going to be a little bit different. Looking at a multi-family building, so those are apartments with maybe 40, 20, 80 units, it's also going to be different. Looking at residential, actually retail, sorry. So those are going to be malls and all these commercial places, the plazas, it's also going to be different. And even when you are looking at just managing a single family home, so whether it's a 5 bedroom in Muyenga or in the CBD in Kololo, it's very possible for you to actually go and be employed to manage just one single family home, and then the relationship between the client and the landlord for that property. So it sort of changes context between markets and then between the different subsets of real estate that we have. But it's all going to be the same thing, and the strategies we are actually going to discuss here will fall onto all those different subsets in their own unique ways, but you'll be able to actually tell the difference. So let's dive further into this whole thing. The first strategy here, I've actually already harped on, but it's going to be deep market knowledge. So you need to first of all be analyzing market trends, and it's going to equip you with valuable insights to stay informed and then make better decisions for your landlords, for your company, and for the people that are involved. An example here is a trend one of my colleagues was able to explain to me. He said that from the time he started doing property management, he sort of noticed this thing that when apartments started to come up, there was so much resistance from people living in apartments simply because they wanted to have their own compounds. So they wanted to have those single family homes. But then with time, the sentiment shifted and they were more welcoming into these apartments, apartment blocks. And then now, shifting from this one family bedroom thing because they wanted a compound, and then into the apartment space, which has already actually passed. Now people are shifting into this sort of gated community. They are welcoming the trend of having gated communities. And he was telling me that that is what is informing his decision to shift. This was actually, I think, at the beginning of the year or last year. He is shifting his strategy from being a multi-family property manager and then being specialized in these gated communities, because he thinks the next opportunity for him to differentiate himself in the market is going to be him being the go-to property manager for gated communities. So he was able to ride the wave of people moving into apartments, and then now he wants to jump onto this gated community thing. So you will see very many gated communities that are coming up right now. And I believe most of you have seen these gated communities being advertised. The one that I know you have definitely seen is going to be Palm Arena, but that's just an example of watching on what the market trends in your specific market are, and then trying to use that to inform your investment or management decisions. So either it is your company investing in a certain niche, or maybe your management decision to actually shift your career or just pivot something that is very helpful for you individually. And then another one is to understand what market characteristics are. So this is having deep market knowledge. So if you are in an area, for example, we are using Kampala, you're going to want to understand the unique neighborhood and its attributes so that you can better be able to use this skill actually when we come into marketing, because you're going to market these properties to potential clients. And that is actually one thing maybe a lot of us don't expect, is that when you come into property management, ideally you are supposed to have a leasing agent or someone that is doing the leasing of the properties. But what happens is you find that at the end of the day, you are the property manager, you're also sharing the unit, and you're getting tenants. So yes, maybe there is a leasing fee or whatever your, or however your company manages this whole process, but you find yourself doing this sales role, or I should say this leasing role. So it is imperative that to gain that competitive advantage, to be able to maximize your occupancy, and then in turn, your fees collected, you manage to understand the unique neighborhood attributes so that you are able to target your market, you're able to explain to your clients what are the benefits of them renting from you, and etc. The other one is legal compliance, and that one I've already explained that there are so many legal risks that properties are exposed to. Property managers, there is liability for all these small things like slips and falls, adherence to how you maybe file for something in cases here. So not having knowledge on what it gets, for example, to say get a construction permit for maybe if you have one block of apartments, your landlord is looking to put up the second block, and then you do that without having a construction permit, that is definitely going to lead you into problems. So having that legal compliance necessity and the knowledge is also going to just give you a big edge. So make sure that you are loaded up on whatever acts are going to be affecting your area. And then if you are outside of Kampala, go into the municipality, find out what affects you, and then you'll be better able to navigate that legal landscape. And actually, that is what you're being paid for. So make sure you are abreast with everything that is going on in the space that you are working in. The next one is innovative marketing strategies, or simply marketing strategies put. So being able to leverage these social medias, online platforms to showcase your property, let's say if you are doing the leasing yourself, to build a brand for the business that you're working with or the company that you're working with, doing those articles, doing content, and that is how maybe you're able to get a few leads in for property management, those owner client leads, is going to be effective, or is going to be necessary for you as a property manager starting. Actually, it already started. So you're going to see that for people in the public sector, so I'm talking about people in government, it may not be very necessary for you to have a public facing platform like LinkedIn or I would say Instagram, maybe not the TikTok. But for people in the private sector, you're going to see, let's give an example of MTN, which is a big corporation in the private sector. You're going to see that they're very active on their social medias, they're very active on all these platforms, just because they are trying to gain market share and they are always putting out these adverts. But even the employees, the CEOs, all these other people have very active public platforms. You get it? And even for property management, you use the example of Knight Frank. You look at all the content they are putting out. Why do you think they're doing well? It's probably because they have that coverage. They are being seen by people. Same thing with the KFC effect. You may not want to get KFC, but you'll see a billboard about a bucket being at whatever price it is right now. And then, trust me, when you are hungry, you'll think back to the billboard and you're more likely to buy the KFC. So the more people interact with your brand, the more likely they are to come to you when they actually want a property manager, when they feel stressed. When, let's say, he has not, a landlord is stressed somewhere, he's very stressed by his property, he's more likely to think about you as a property manager that he saw on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on the news, uh, than he is to think of me who has not done this. So, yeah, that is trying to tailor your marketing and your social media and leveraging all those platforms to showcase not just your properties, but also yourself. So if you're showcasing your properties, you are trying to attract high quality tenants, which at the end of it all, like we said, helps your occupancy. And then if you're attracting owner clients, those are owner leads, landlords, it also helps your bottom line because you're able to get more work to do in general. All right, the other thing here is to highlight unique features when you are trying to market these properties. I see a lot of property managers who take walkthrough videos and they're not highlighting the property's distinctiveness, because what you want to do is be able to convince the tenant that yes, this is a nice property and this is what let's say we are charging rent at, but these are the unique features you get when you rent with us, or these are the unique experiences you get when you rent with us. I see a lot of agents, especially this one is actually a tip for agents, but it can also work for property management, that are going to just showcase a property. They will take a video of the front, they will take a video of the sitting room, the bedroom, the water closet, and then that is the end of it all. But they have not given the full experience of yes, they have taken the video of the front and then they walk through the property while the video is running. Such the tenant sort of has this position whereby they are in your position and they're able to envision themselves coming in from the gate, and then someone opens for them and then they're able to get in. And let's say if they are on floors number 2 or number 10, they want to see the journey there. Are there lifts? Are there stairs? How big are the stairs? Are they able to bring that couch, that very big bed that they have from wherever they are staying? Will it fit? Things like that. They want to know how their kids are going to be moving around. They want to know all these are subtle decisions that potential clients make through your video, especially if before they decide to come and view. Because I do support the whole thing of having brokers ask clients to have viewing fees. That is very necessary for our industry. But then you'll see that a lot of leads fall through just because of that. And the one way you can ensure that you are converting more people, more tenants to pay those viewing fees so that they can actually go and view the property is by giving them as much information in the video without giving them too much. So you just sort of produce that, I should say that hunger for them to actually physically walk the property. Yeah. But then the third tip here is to implement traditional marketing techniques. So the whole flyers, local advertisement, TV is a big one. We'll see that anyone that has bid on TV usually gets a big boost in their, I don't know if in their business, I don't know if it is a hardcore rule, but it works. So maybe you can also consider that. And then the next strategy is to develop exceptional communication skills. So within the whole environment of communication is being able to manage this relationship between all these three parties. So the three parties I'm talking about are the landlord, who is going to be the person that has employed you to look after the property, the tenants, who are going to be your customers, and then the vendors, who are going to be the people that you're working with. So vendors, I'm talking about plumbers, electricians, the garbage disposal people, the cleaners. All these people support the property and the operations of the property, and then the tenants are why you are there, and then the landlords are also why you are there, but in a different way. So making sure that you optimize for communication, number one, is a tenant satisfaction thing. So you focus on tenant satisfaction to enhance that retention. Such, remember, the more tenants you retain, the higher your occupancy is, and the more money you're able to collect at the end of the, I should say, the building cycle. So personally, I look at communication as trying to optimize for the tenant's experience, because if I can have the experience to be better and better every single month, or at least not to be negative, then I can retain them for the long term, and then I can just keep on billing them every month for utilities, for rent, and then it's just everything goes as it's supposed to be. I bill them, they pay. I smile, they smile. And then the next one is building relationships. So cultivating strong relationships with tenants promotes trust, encourages open communication, and improves overall property management. So you realize that for example, for tenants that you don't have a relationship with, they're not going to pick up your calls when you call to ask for rent. Maybe they have damage in their property, they damage a sink or something like that. They're not going to tell you, and they're going to wait to move out. And then that is when you'll find all these things that are spoiled. And at that time, they cost more to repair, and yet they would have been done, regardless of the fact that they are being covered from a security deposit. It's going to make the turnover time, the time that you take from this tenant moving out to the next one moving in, is going to be long, simply because you're doing more repairs, even if the repairs are being covered by security deposit. Now, the worst part there is if you don't have security deposit, and if security deposit is not enough, then in that case, if you haven't built these relationships, that is going to damage you. And then the third step here is in transparency within the communication. So being transparent, especially with your clients, and then more importantly with your landlords. So all these three are going to, number one, help you to build this sort of relationship that is going to just make your work a lot easier. When you can talk to people, when you can coordinate all these different aspects, not just with a tenant. I focused on the tenant because they are the central part here. But then when you build this, when you replicate the system with the landlords and then with the vendors, you're able to get better rates, you're able to get support from your landlord. Maybe they even trust you with more properties. And those are the things that make property management far more easier. And at the end of it all, you're able to offer updates, you're able to have regular tenant feedback sessions, and then you have clear lease arguments because you're able to articulate the clauses that are in it. And then at the end of it all, tenants are going to renew leases, you're going to reduce vacancy costs, it increases rent collected, and overall it's just a good experience for you. So I believe that the exceptional communication skills part is very important for anyone trying to start up in real estate. And then the next one is customer excellence. So timeliness in responses, being proactive in complaint handling, and then creating that feedback loop. Now, customer care is very essential for actually any service-based business, and property management is one of those service-based businesses. Timeliness in responses simply means that whenever there are inquiries, whenever someone is trying to communicate something, you are proactively communicating with them back. I see a lot of landlords, or actually, I see a lot of property managers that try to make it very hard for tenants to reach them simply because tenants are always complaining. But I want to tell you that when you take up the property management role, know that most of the time the tenant is going to be calling you for something negative, and then most of the time it's going to be a complaint, and you're going to have to address it simply because that is why you were employed. The landlord, I should say, employed you because they didn't want to address those complaints themselves, and they outsourced this to a third party, which is you. So you're trying to make yourself not reachable. At the end of the day, damages your reputation, your it damages your relationship with that client, and in turn your relationship with the landlord or even with a vendor if you're trying not to be responsive. So I try to encourage everyone on my team to be as responsive as possible. Maybe you don't answer immediately, so that you're always available for them, and they think whenever they text you, you will be able to see the text within 1 2 hours. But a reasonable time is within 24 hours. Always at least make sure that everyone that has texted you within a 24-hour, I should say, period has been responded to within those 24 hours. Don't wait to respond to a message, respond to a call after 24 hours and be like, I missed your call. No, it's been 24 hours. Try to be proactive. The other part about being proactive is in complaint handling. So tenants, like I've said, are going to come to you with all these problems. And what demonstrates your commitment to their lifestyle, to the concerns they have, is if you're able to actually handle those complaints. So property managers I know get overwhelmed when you, for example, are managing an apartment block of let's say 16 units, and one Monday you wake up and five people have an issue, you work on two. The next day, another five have an issue, you work on two, and then maybe by Friday, out of the 15 issues that have come across your desk, you've only solved five, and the 10 get carried into next week, and then next week adds its own issues, and then you start to see that your to-do list is growing into this behemoth of something that is not manageable for you, and then it starts to affect your productivity. It starts to affect the tenants and what they think about you. So trying to be as proactive as possible in handling those uh, complaints when they come in is actually going to save you. It's going to show that you are committed to their concerns, and it's going to actually enhance occupancy. Like I've said, once the tenant is happy, they're going to stay for the long term. The last one is creating a feedback loop. So by feedback, I mean you're able to, for example, use feedback forms if you are in a community, and you're able to sort of get feedback from your clients, from your landlord. What is working, what doesn't work, what can we improve? Maybe we have this whole budget thing and we're trying to decide on what to do, and we want to know what the residents would prefer better. So those are things that are going to help you to make the tenants feel like they're involved in what is happening in the community they are living in. And then you're able to also justify some of these things when you go to the landlord and say, I recommend we, for example, repair the gate because it's a nuisance. The tenants feel safe. I mean, they feel unsafe. And yes, I know it's a hefty price, but this is something that the tenants are actively lobbying for. And then you're able to show him the feedback forms. And in such cases, I have found that it is easier to requisition for these huge ticket items if I have justification from not just me as the property manager, but also the tenant, because the landlord on their side is also trying to optimize for having less expenses. But at the same time, they want to keep the tenants. So I just know that that customer care element is very vital. Right. And then the next one is to have strong organizational skills. So being efficient at agreement handling, and not just actually agreements, but document handling. So whatever document it is, if it's a lease agreement, if it's a receipt, you need to be efficient at managing and filing all these things. The other one is thorough tenant screening. So you have to implement these different systems, and it's going to form part of your organizational structure or your SOPs. So having strong organizational skills and then building a system around it is one of the things that has actually made this whole job a lot easier. Because, for example, if I know that I'm supposed to do tenant screening for every client that comes into property X, I'm going to have a schedule that I follow, in that when they have an inquiry, they send me their details, and then I run a background check, and then I provide the check back to the landlord. They give the final go ahead, and then I reach out to the tenant. We send them a draft of the lease, they review the lease, and then after the lease has been reviewed, we then prepare for signing while they make the payment, and then we meet on one day and have the signature from the client and their witness. I am the witness for the landlord side, and then I have their signature as well. And that is going to sort of form my system for how tenant screening and onboarding is done. At the end of the day, if I'm able to condense that into an SOP, so standard operating procedures for my entire team, they are going to look far more organized when they're doing some of these things. For example, how do you handle a complaint when it comes in? If a tenant reports through WhatsApp or calls you, what is the first thing you do? Do you reach out to the vendor to get a cost estimate, or do you send someone there to take pictures and have a visual representation, or do you actually request that the tenant sends you pictures and then all that? It's just going to be part of your system and part of your organizational skills to figure out what is going to best work for you and the environment that you're working with. Because remember, this is going to be very different from someone that is living or working in Kampala as a property manager and then someone that is in Gulu. For example, if I am managing a property in Kampala, maybe it's a high-end property. The client may want his things done immediately. So I'm going to have an SOP built around reducing the amount of time that is between the client reporting an issue and then it being worked on. Things like that. But the other step here is to organize your maintenance scheduling. So everyone knows that in property management, you're going to be dealing with repairs. So being able to schedule these in and then having those normal preventive maintenance activities like service of the generator, uh, quarterly fumigation, or however you do it is also going to be another thing. So here I go ahead to mention a few tools like calendar for scheduling and then SOPs, which are going to be important for your team, and then online drives, which is for storing the documents like we noticed before. The other one that I actually harped on during our introduction was crisis management skills. So the most frustrating part for at least myself in property management has always been when things go wrong. And it's just more and more that I have learned that it's just part of the job. One day you're going to wake up and the gate is no longer there. I mean, these things happen. You can be managing a property outside Kampala or in Gulu, and the tenants will call you in the morning and be like, thieves broke into the place, they stole this, and then your whole day, 2 days, 3 weeks is filled with making police reports, doing damage assessment, and then being able to replace the gate if it has been taken, or someone's property was destroyed and they want to impose that onto the landlord. But you have to just be able to manage those times. And that is what I'm calling crisis management skills. So that you are not overwhelmed, because when you start to get overwhelmed during those periods, you get more stressed and you might actually just grow up to hate the job. And yet it's just that season. It's not the entire thing. Most of the time, actually, 80% of the time, things are going well, tenants are paying, and then once in 2 months, you will have a tenant that is not or has not cleared for some time, and then you have to either send them continuous notices and then start to enforce the lease and almost even go into eviction. Sometimes you go there, and that's not a very, I should say, welcoming situation to be in, but it is necessary for you to optimize for the landlord's what profitability. So you end up having to do them. So crisis readiness framework, that is being able to handle and tackle all these things. How do you deal with emergencies? Let's say at 2 a.m., do you have someone you can send there, or do you have a way for clients to be able to reach you? And then rapid incident assessment. If, for example, they are broken into one of your properties, you're able to assess what was taken. You're able to, I should say, communicate with all the clients. And that is all just trying to assess what happened, have one story, and then you're able to file a police report on that or a statement, and it just makes the process a lot more easier, other than having to do all this when the police is asking you, what is this? No, you already have all the information at hand by the time you go to the police or something like that. And then post incident review. So for example, if there was a break-in at one of your properties, after the incident has been reported, you have done ABCD to rectify, you're able to follow up with clients and continue to assure them that you're looking out for their safety. If they notice anything, you are able to remind them to continuously lock the gate, things like that. Or if it was negligence from the caretaker, which I hope for you is not, you're also able to deal with that. You are now doing a post-incident review process, and then you conduct evaluations on how it was done and then how to make things better. And then the next one here is on utilizing property management software. So one of the biggest benefits in actually onboarding a software for your business is going to be in the time and automation that it's going to give your team. So in my case, we use a software that was developed internally to streamline operations. So these admin tasks are all done through the software, and then it also gives us the advantage that everything is handled through the software, so we can have a track of who did X, when was, let's say, tenant A, when did they request for their door to be repaired, when did they request for their sink to be repaired, who did that repair, what was the amount that was quoted in the initial analysis, and then the landlord is also able to log in and view what is happening. And then there's also this whole communication portal that we have that is able to improve communications, because I don't have to go to my WhatsApp to check for tenant X and then find what they said, and it's all in one software. So when any one of my teams, logs into a property, they're able to see a conversation that, let's say, for example, me, Raymond, has had with a tenant from last month, last year, and then they're able to react without not having that gap of knowledge between the two people. Even when someone else leaves, it is just their account that is deleted, but the information and the flow and the messaging remains there with that client, and then the next person can easily track and see what the situation was when it started, how it is going, and then how to probably come in and fix it, especially if we are trying to coordinate something. So that is the biggest thing in property management software. A lot of them also go ahead to provide things like maintenance tracking, accounting. So you're able to collect the rent on online. Ours doesn't do that just because we don't want to go into the technicalities of providing financial services or managing money through a platform. So we don't do that. We just have receipts, leases, and all these other documents uploaded, and anyone in the system can query as long as you are tied to that unit. So, for example, if I have a block of apartments in, let's say, Nigeria, there are 20 units. So the landlord for that property can view all the documents for that property alone. And then the property managers that are attached to that property can also view all the documents. But the tenant that is attached to, let's say, Unit 20 can only view the documents that are attached to Unit 20. So it sort of gives the landlords an overview, the property managers an overview, and then the tenants only the information that they need. And then everyone is looking at one document instead of having multiple things and everyone is trying to say X or Y when the actual thing is Z. So personally, for me, if you are very organized, you might not need to onboard the software because it becomes very hard to bring tenants on board, especially if there is a barrier to entry for them, if they maybe need to download an app, if they need to put in their details, it's going to be hard for them. But if you evaluate and see that the price of bringing on a software because you're going to pay for it is going to be worth it, then it's something I would just say go for it. Personally, for us, like I've said, we built something internally and we personalized it to what our environment is and then what we want from the software. So literally, that is it. Just be careful when you're bringing on software. But let's move on to the next one, which is building a reliable vendor network. So vendor partnerships are important because they have a direct correlation with what your performance is. You have to realize that the performance of your plumbers, your electricians reflects the performance on you. So, for example, if they are not doing a good job, it's going to be said that the property manager is not doing a good job. If they are doing a good job, they're going to say the property manager is doing a good job. So, you need to understand that you need to choose, first of all, reliable vendors because their performance directly impacts yours. And then the next one is actually to have those vendor relationships. This is all going to be communication and then collaborating with those reliable people. So make sure that at least for each thing, let's say if it is plumbers, you have at least one or two or three advisable plumbers that you have on call for your properties. And then cost effectiveness, you need to make sure that through the relationships that you build, you're able to offer competitive prices for your landlords at high quality work. So you're able to, or the vendors that you work with are able to offer competitive pricing for your landlords, and then they're able to even deliver quality work. So it shouldn't be this whole thing that if you're going to pay more, or pay less, you're going to get lower quality work. You should be able to optimize for those maintenance budgets and ensure that there is value for property owners because that's what they are bringing you there to do. They know that you already have this network and that you're able to get them and bargain for them better prices simply because of the network that you have. So as you're choosing those vendor networks and those vendors that you're working with, make sure that this is also a factor that you account for. Then reliability in emergencies. A dependable vendor network ensures a swift response during crises, maintaining property's integrity and minimizing disruption to tenants' lives. So I'll give an example here of lifts. If you are operating in a building whereby you have a lift vendor or a service provider and they are not able to respond within a few minutes, ideally they should be at least 10 to 1 hour when a lift is down or they're able to troubleshoot it from where they are or something like that. It is going to be very difficult for you, especially if you're in a commercial building. Now in commercial buildings they usually have an on-site person or they have someone that is able to be deployed within 10 minutes to deal with these emergencies, but you need to have a sort of reliability with your vendor network. For example, if a, a pipe is to burst in the middle of the night, how are you going to deal with that? Are you guys going to wait until morning and the whole compound is flooded and then you have this huge bill? Or are you able to actually deal with it and get someone out there at that time, regardless of what time it is, to deal with it and just pay them extra? Because I mean, the difference between paying a utility bill of 2 million and a vendor 200K to go and do that work is I should say should be a straightforward decision for you as a property manager. Maybe you need to justify it for your landlords, but in my case, I've always seen that I'm able to sort of project this future cost for them and then convince them otherwise to just make this investment, because that's what all investments are. Anyway, then going on to understanding financial acumen. So the whole thing about the finances in property management are going to be in three things. So it's going to be rent collection, budgeting, and then expense management. So in rent collection, you're trying to implement these consistent processes for rent collection and making sure that you maximize timely payments and minimize financial discrepancies. So what I mean by consistent processes is, for example, every tenant receives a call on the last day of the month if they have not yet made payment for that month or for the next month or for the next quarter, whatever your system is. You have a day with which you follow up with rents. You have a specific day in which rent notices go out. You have another day in which someone is considered overdue and either they are charged with a penalty or they get another notice or they get a physical meetup or a physical meeting to discuss what is going on, things like that. Budgeting techniques, so you are able to budget and show what your expected, for example, income is going to be for the year 2026 and then expected expenses, and then you're able to plan for that and have these monies on hand so that, let's say, at the end of the month, you're able to pay out the vendors, you're able to pay out cleaners, you're able to do all these things that you need to be able to run the property effectively. And then expense tracking. So for purposes of taxes, but even just for the normal operation of the building, a landlord is going to want to know what is their bottom line, what are the expenses that they are going through, where can they save money, where is their money going, in other words. And this one just comes down to expense tracking practices. So make sure that you adopt thorough expense tracking methods to assess operational costs and enhance financial reporting accuracy. The other one, which actually builds on this, is providing detailed financial reports. So detailed financial insights and reports that are going to help property owners to clearly see the performance of their investment. So, for example, why I wanted to include this here is that sometimes you'll work with landlords that want their reports in a specific format or that want their finances with a specific detail. And you need to be able and flexible to tailor your financial reports to what the owner's preferences are to understand or to enhance understanding. For example, if you are working for a government institution, they have a certain way in which their finance or their account team does reconciliations, does payments, does financial reports. So you might need to adopt their system in order to work with them. It might be an MTN. There is a way MTN does its own things. It actually has a full vendor portal. I've forgotten how it's called, but they have a full proprietary system in how they pay out and manage invoices within their system. So you're also going to have to adopt that and then adopt to how they report for shareholders, especially because it's a public limited company. Things like that are going to be very essential for you to actually catch up on, depending on what you are working with. If it's an individual landlord and he just needs to know, you collected 100 million, you've spent 20, where it is 80, how much is he paying taxes on? It's going to be easier for you. So just make sure that you have those financial updates, because consistently updating your property owners on their financial status is also going to help you in the long run, because it shows that you are transparent and it shows them initiative. And most of the time, they're going to continue with you because a lot of property managers, unfortunately, in our industry do not provide these reports. So you're also going to have this differentiating factor when you do this. So this brings us to the end of this discussion. I hope that you picked out the key skills and you'll be able to implement them. Please be committed to excellence, be committed to best practices, and I believe that you will enjoy the profession. It gets hard at the beginning, but it also gets easier at the end. My name is Raymond. I am a property manager with Royalty Services Limited, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.